Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Tiana Keith, and tonight we are talking about how teamwork makes the dream work. So tonight we are going to go over what is a team. We're going to talk a little bit about what makes up a team and what makes up a working group. And we're also going to talk about how we can build effective teams using goal setting and trust building processes. So, what is the difference between a working group and a team? Well, a working group is a group of individuals that come together for a common goal, and each person is individually responsible for their own part in making sure that that goal gets accomplished. So when these groups come together, it is typically to talk. So they talk about decision-making processes, they share information, and so on and so on. So for example, if we've ever had a group project in which every person kind of had their own tasks that they were supposed to do, and they presented the project, and then in the end, they got a grade, but based on the individual efforts of that project, that is a working group. So teams, on the other hand, are kind of the same thing. They are a group of individuals that come together to establish and complete a common goal. But the difference between teams and working groups is that a team works not only individually, but they work collaboratively as well. So by collaboratively, I mean that there is a single task that two or more people are working on at the same time. So when teams come together, it is to talk, just like working groups. And so, they talk about decision-making processes and timelines and things like that, but it is also to work. So if we think about a project that we've done where everybody kind of comes together and they work together on the same thing, we present the project, and then we get one grade for the entire project. So everybody gets the same grade. This is a team group project. So if we think about our consulting project, that's probably going to be along the lines of a team project. So this is a quote from the reading that I thought was really important to talk about teams tonight. And the quote is, "The structure of a group is not as important as behavioral willingness." So basically, this is saying that for teamwork, it doesn't matter who's in charge. It doesn't matter who the leader is, and it doesn't matter who's doing what. What's important is that people are coming together, they're acknowledging that they're a team, and they're willing to put forth those behaviors that build effective teams. So, how do we build effective teams? Well, the first part of building an effective team is through goal setting. And there are three parts to the goal setting process, and that is purpose, specificity, and process. So the purpose is the why of a project. So if we think about our consulting projects, this is our needs analysis. So we are kind of looking for common themes, and we are looking to see where there is the most need. So the next part is specificity. So specificity is the how part of a project. So it is the specific and measurable outcomes for a group project. So once again, if we think about our consulting projects, this is the SME interview part. So this is where we're identifying how we can bridge those gaps, how we can be of best use. And the last part is process. Process is basically the logistic part of team building. So it is coming together and kind of talking about who's going to do what topics are going to be individually contributed for, and which ones are going to be done collaboratively. So this is a really important part of goal setting, because as individuals, we can really grow in the process aspect, acknowledging our own strengths and weaknesses and kind of assigning ourselves to those tasks. So the next part is establishing trust. So we can establish trust with potency and vulnerability. So potency is very similar to self-efficacy, but instead of for an individual, it's for a group. So it is a group coming together with the general idea of, yes, we can do this. So we can build potency by coming together as a group and reflecting on our past successes, or by practicing conscientiousness. So the next part is vulnerability. And vulnerability is really important in establishing trust, because it is the act of recognizing in yourself where you struggle and also talking about where others are stronger than you. So the common language with vulnerability is, I was wrong, or somebody is better at something than I am. So before we close tonight, I would kind of like to give us the opportunity to practice vulnerability because it is so important. So I will go ahead and go first. So my weakness is that I'm really detail oriented, sometimes to the point of getting lost in the Excel file or completely forgetting why it is that we're there in the first place. Luckily for me, I have an amazing teammate, Lorena, who is better than I am at seeing the big picture. And she really helps to kind of reel me in and be like, okay, Tiana, this is why we're here. This is what we're doing. So I'd like to go ahead and open up the floor to anybody who wants to practice a little bit of vulnerability, talk about their own weaknesses or possibly a strength that you see in other people. Yes, no? I will call them. Go ahead.
I can sometimes be a perfectionist with my work, so kind of like paralyzes me to finish because I never think that it's good enough.
I completely understand. I'm right there with you. Is there somebody that you're working with that you've recognized a strength in?
All of my group members, honestly, but especially Amy. She's not here right now, but
It's okay.
yeah, she has a lot of qualities that I kind of admire.
That's fantastic. See, that is part of vulnerability. That's part of building trust, is recognizing where it is that you may struggle and where other people succeed, and being able to talk about that openly, verbally, and comfortably, and as often as possible. And that will really help us grow as individuals. So in closing tonight, we talked about the difference between working groups and teams. We talked about goal setting using purpose, specificity, and process. And we talked about how to build trust using potency and vulnerability. Any questions? Thank you.
I'm finding it really hard to find any constructive criticism of it because I think it was perfect.
Oh, thank you. This was my first speech that I had the note cards, but I didn't need to use it. I'm just like super proud of myself. So.
I mean, you walked around naturally. Your slides were perfect. I mean, I can't think of it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Questions? You want to talk about how vulnerable you are?
No, I just want to say I always love how you are fully prepared. Like, you're obviously fully prepared. And I really appreciate that. This is like super splitting hairs because honestly, this is like personal preference. I don't think it really matters.
No, I'm ready
I
for
took
it.
a speech class and they were talking about like certain like power walks, about certain motions to go along with your speech and moving at a certain place for certain points. And I think that could be more powerful than pacing because pacing just gets kind of back and forth.
Right.
So again, I think that's just something to consider.
No, you're absolutely right. Honestly, like when I practice at home, this is what I do at home. I have a very small living room, so I pace at home. So when I practice here, I do what I do at home. But like that's actually really helpful. That means that I need to start like walking around my couch and stuff like that and like giving it more purpose. So no, thank you. That's really helpful. Carissa, did you have something?
Yeah, I think you did a wonderful job. You can tell the preparation that was involved with your presentation. I like how you included the vulnerability with the whole class. So I think you did a good job.
Thank you. Anybody else? Ready? I got thick skin. I can take it. Okay. Dr. Fuller?
Yeah, I loved it. It was great. Great content. I like how you were thorough but not exhaustive because you have a limited time frame, so you know what you're working with. I appreciate that. That was very good, really well curated there for time. I would say when it comes to like a light, like the projector, try and not stand in it. Right? It's hard because there's not a ton of space, but you want to find that space where you're just out of it, where it's not shining on the top of your head where you can't see it, and also clearly not in your eyes, because that you can feel and see. but I would try to do that so that we can see you. It just looks more professional.
Right.
In
It's
that way.
kind of hard because I'm tall.
Right?
Like
Yeah.
that's always the problem.
Yeah. That's going to be a challenge for you. So that's one, just piece that I think may be helpful. Other than that, I thought it was really good. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Excellent. Of course. All right. Thanks, everybody.
And on YouTube, you're getting comments on YouTube, Tiana, because we are live on YouTube. So you're getting comments from the YouTube sphere as well. This is from Danielle in our class. So she said, "I love how she brought in our consulting projects in it. Great, and gave us perspective for a completely different class." So, yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was asking a lot of security features.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carissa Sanchez, and today I will be presenting on transformational leadership and how it's applied through neuroscience. So last week we talked about leadership, so I'm going to be doing my presentation that I was done last week. So let's talk about what is neuroscience. So neuroscience is a study of the nervous system. So it gives us the activities on how we should think or how we should act based off of the events that you are experiencing. So sometimes you may feel sad, sometimes you may feel happy, excited, and joy. So how can transformational leadership approach be applied through neuroscience? So I'm going to be talking about different aspects of how it can be applied and the importance of it. So one is focus. And focus is to really understand the leaders and the followers' brain while implementing transformational leadership. And then we have leaders' role. What leader roles is to motivate the followers through understanding the brain of the followers, but as well as the leaders. Then the last aspect is approach. The approach is understanding the rewards and threats to motivate the followers. So we want to maximize the rewards and to minimize any types of threats. So now we're going to go through the thinking process with transformational leaders. So this is just a diagram, and the next slide we'll be talking about how we can implement it as an example. So first, we're going to be talking about the neuroscience intervention. The neuroscience intervention may change based on what the transformational leader is trying to accomplish. Okay? Then it's going to go through the transmission channels. The first channel is going to be the emotion. So how does that make you feel? Then we're going to go through the hormones, and then how it's going to impact on the leader. And then eventually it will have an intermediate goal. And then, of course, the overall goal is the organization effectiveness. So let's look at it as an example, because that was a lot of information. Okay, so let's try to say if you're trying to improve agility. So there's multiple change that is occurring. So what are some ways that a transformational leadership can do? We have an intervention with some type of physical or brain exercise. So what that is going to do is that's going to go through your emotions. So you're going to feel joy, excitement. You're going to decrease any type of fear. And then it's going to go through your hormones. So the endorphins are going to increase. So what endorphin is like a painkiller, almost like a Tylenol, right? You having a big migraine and you need something that is going to make that migraine to go away. But this is more of a natural course through the hormones. So it decreases any type of fear or anxiety in your brain. And what that's going to do, that's going to impact on the leaders. And so what that impact will look like is facilitating any type of change. And the intermediate goal is one, of course, to improve agility, and it will eventually have an impact on the organization effectiveness. So this document that I gave you, there's so many different examples. I just gave you guys only one just to do to the time frame that we have. So the first part that we're looking at is applying the neuroscience intervention. So earlier I talked about we're trying to improve agility. So increasing the intervention, what that would look like is physical activity. So if we're going to improve breakthrough, the neuroscience intervention for that is relaxation. So again, the intervention may change based off of what the transformational leader is trying to improve. All right, this concludes my presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yes.
Someone speak.
Good job. I think an area of improvement may have been just like having a conclusion slide. I feel like it ended like kind of abruptly. So that just like would have been a little bit nice to put a bow on it or something.
Okay.
Yeah, very good. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
I thought your presentation was very interactive, like you're very nice to like listen to. You moved around a lot. It was very easy to listen to and follow along. The only thing was visually, like it seemed like you kind of just pasted like figures that you found online onto your PowerPoint. It might have been nice to like maybe make your own or something like that. That would have been more like a visual that we could have been more inclined to look at.
Okay.
But overall, you did really good.
Thank you. Yes.
I was gonna say how it was a different type of perspective, including neuroscience in transformation leadership. So it was really interesting to see why it talks about it, because I know that there is always a reason for our actions, and I know this is kind of a glimpse of what exactly happens in our brains when we are performing those things as a leader. So, good job.
Yes.
Tell Amy, but did you talk about what transformational leadership is? No.
No, I
So-
did not.
Yeah, so I feel like it was very informational on the neuroscience part, but I feel like I was left thinking of like the transformational leadership part. You probably said something, but
I did not. No, I did not. I did a research project on transformational leadership, so I do have a lot of knowledge in it. But no, that would have been a good aspect too.
Yeah,
Thank
and then
you.
one more thing is, you mentioned about agility, and then you showed pictures of this, worksheet that you passed out. I don't see agility on here, so I think that's why I got lost on some parts, because I was looking for agility, but I couldn't find it.
Under the intermediate goal is actually the second one.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, yeah, sorry, that was my fault.
No, that's okay. I should have explained that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that you seemed a lot more comfortable up there, than your last, presentation, so good job, I feel like you came, I could tell you like this topic, like this is something that you enjoyed, so I did wanna give you a positive, along with my previous comment. But I think that you're doing better as in, your appearance and how you are up there, but I would just make sure that you're like connecting, coming back to, the main point.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Are you a detail-oriented person?
Am I a detail-oriented person? I like to know the reasoning behind why people act a certain way, so yes.
Yeah. In your presentation, there's just a lot of detail.
Mhm.
That's why I asked.
Yeah.
Is that just something you gravitate towards? I think it's fascinating to bring in two kind of new concepts like transformational leadership, something we haven't talked too much about before, and also neuroscience, which we don't really talk about in this course. To bring those both together, I thought was a really great idea. I like that notion. I think the complexity of it makes it difficult, right? Because they're both very large, complicated topics
Yeah.
with tons of nuance to each of them, let alone combined together.
Mhm.
So something that may help an audience connect and move with you through that complicated environment, that kind of dense information, would be a clearer story arc, like something we can grab onto, like something we can really hold.
Okay.
Because you're at a much higher level in like cognitive demand,
Mhm.
and getting there is a big jump. We need something like incremental to get us to that point, like a story, a personal anecdote, or some relatable humorous joke, or some example, some really clear everybody does this example, or everyone can relate or understand with this popular example,
Mhm.
with this specific thing that you're talking about. And then we can like have this aha, like, oh, that's transformational leadership and neuroscience and how this physiologically takes place and why, right? So to have that kind of clarity, I know it's a big ask because
No, yeah.
it's like make this very complicated thing simple,
Yeah.
but that would be the goal, right? And any really complicated thing with a very short time frame, you want to make it simple so that people can latch on to the idea and have something memorable at the end of the presentation where they're like, oh, I learned something, I know something now, I can remember it easily. Whereas before I didn't know anything about it, couldn't, you wouldn't have known before the presentation. So I would think working towards that would be really helpful. And I think that would be helpful for someone that is this detail oriented as well. So thank you for your presentation. Very good. the most YouTube people we've had on our channel.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, five people are watching right now, which is,
Is it the people who weren't here?
yes. I'm assuming yes.
No, it's random people.
It was a bunch of randos, not so great. That'd be really funny.
Like just what happened at the same name as people in the class.
Oh, that would be crazy. Yeah.
All right, so this is my presentation on team building techniques. So in our readings, there were 4 major team member processes that we went over. So communication was defined as the clarification of information and acknowledgement of receipt of said information. Leadership, which is essentially just guiding or coaching a team in the ways that they can improve. Mutual monitoring and backup behavior are sort of related. So mutual monitoring would be observing the behaviors that your teammates are doing so that you can help them with backup behaviors such as, for example, corrective feedback. If you notice somebody was doing something incorrect, you give them the backup behavior of helping them know what they were doing that was incorrect. Or if they were unable to do something, you could take it over for them. That would be backing them up in that way. So this was a figure in the reading that I thought was super illuminating. It talks about a lot of the common difficulties that teams can face and what a leader can do to correct them. So for example, if there's a lack of commitment, you can focus on confronting these issues. If there's a fear of conflict, you can demand, debate. You can confront the difficult issues. So there's a lot of stuff on this slide, so I found a funny meme that I thought kind of condensed it in a memorable way. So one thing that I thought was really great about this reading was that there was some prescriptive, applicable ways to develop teams or effective teams. So in the readings, they talked about scenario-based training, which is essentially just work simulations. And they talked about something that Tiana mentioned, which is reflection is very important. I know Dr. Iverson talks about this, how part of experiential learning is reflecting on what went well and what didn't go well, so that you can learn from successes and failures. So that's one important thing. But in my research, I came across game-based learning, which is another really cool way of learning that I kind of wanted to do an exercise or an activity with you guys if you're willing. So just to get into it, game-based learning is just using games to develop skills. It's been shown to improve a lot of things, leadership, teamwork, even financial outcomes in business students. So it's super effective. So I have a little game that we could play. It's like a competition. So if I could get, 2 people who want to be a team and then another 2 people who want to be a team for like a little 1-minute drawing back-to-back communication exercise, if anybody wants to do that.
Yeah. We're going. Who wants to?
For sure.
We're going down.
Okay, thank you.
Oh no, not as competitive.
So, okay, it's pretty simple. It's just back-to-back drawing. So what you're gonna do is one person's gonna be facing the board, one person's gonna be facing the class, and you guys are gonna be communicating what to draw based on what the person who has the picture sees. And you.
Sorry.
Okay, right?
Yeah, and you only get 1 minute.
Okay.
So,
Can I use the green one?
yeah, that's cool. That's cool for sure. So who wants to go first?
Oh, that makes sense.
I could go first.
Okay.
So I have to guess.
So yeah, since you guys get to go first, you get to pick the picture so that you.
Oh,
Is she supposed to see too?
Oh, no, you're not supposed to.
Okay.
Did you guys both see the picture?
Yeah. Well, only she only saw one. So
Okay, so you only
she only
saw
saw
one.
one. We're switching teams.
We're switching teams. I forget how
So only one person can see the picture so that you can communicate the picture and draw it. So it's like working on the
Got it.
communication.
Alexis has to draw and you saw the picture, so she has to draw. Oh. Okay, go. I look this way.
Okay.
And I can't say what it is.
Yeah, you can only like say shapes and like areas to draw it, but you can't say like an attribute of the specific thing or like the name of the thing.
Oh, it has to be the exact same thing.
Yeah, so like you would say like a triangle or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first you're gonna draw a triangle. Then down the middle of the triangle, you're gonna draw a line. And you're gonna go down past the end of the triangle about half an inch. Then at the top of the triangle, you're gonna draw another triangle on its side, connecting to the line down the middle. At the bottom of the line through the triangle, you're gonna draw an oval.
You have 15
Or it's gonna be draw the oval on its side, but long-wise.
And that's fine.
That's
Okay.
pretty good. That's pretty good.
We are doing, yeah. Oh, great. Let me go first. Thank you.
Can I show the audience?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ooh.
Guys, it's gonna be fine. Don't
Alright, so you're gonna draw, oh, let me know.
You're good.
Okay, you're gonna draw a rectangle on the left side of the rectangle at the very top, you're gonna draw a circle. And then at the top of that circle, you're gonna draw like a rainbow shape or like a macaroni shape. At the top of the circle. Like a rainbow shape. And then on the left side of the circle, you're gonna draw another triangle. And then on the tip of that triangle, you're gonna draw a circle. And then somewhere near that triangle, inside the circle, you're gonna draw another circle. Okay. So then on the right side of the rectangle, at the very top, you're gonna draw a little oval.
And that's fine.
At the bottom of the rectangle.
Very good.
Great job. That one was way, way harder. That's why I didn't know that.
rainbow macaroni. What are you saying to me?
I was gonna tell her like, so it's something that goes in water. Right?
You guys did great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I don't know. You guys both did really good. I don't know if I could declare a winner. What do you guys think? Who do you think won?
We clearly won.
Thank you. Thank you for my macaroni.
That was super good, but it was an easier drawing. So
Yay.
Tell me it's good. Don't
so this is an example of like a game-based team learning exercise you could do as a consultant. The research articles that I linked talked about a couple of different ways. There was a Minecraft game that people did that was shown to increase communication. Even like there was a puzzle that they did. They also did it was Sim City was one of the other ones that they did in the research article. So there's a lot of virtual and physical games that can be played. I didn't think it would be feasible in the time to do like Minecraft. So That's why I went with this one. But I hope you guys enjoyed it and you learned something. And that's all that I have. Thank you for your time. Does anybody have any feedback?
I love the idea for the game. I think it was really fun, very interactive. I think I just would have, I would recommend for there to be a little bit more structure, just as far as like giving instructions on getting the game rolling and everything.
Yeah.
A little bit more efficient, but it was really good. And also, I noticed at the beginning of the presentation, you were moving around, but it just felt kind of mechanical at points. I don't know. I feel like if it was a little bit more natural movement, like a little bit more flowy, it would just make the presentation that much better. But awesome job.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I definitely agree. I totally realized in the moment that I did a horrible job explaining the rule. Anybody else?
I really enjoyed the topic. I felt like because of the activity, I was able to get a real grasp on like the whole topic as a whole. Like, I mean, obviously you did a good job explaining it beforehand, but it's gonna leave a lasting impression because of the game. I always really enjoy your presentations because you're very intellectual and you always have really good information. The only thing is sometimes at times I feel like you're very monotone. So maybe kind of putting some emotion with your voice, because you're giving us really good information, but sometimes it might be a little flat.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, and I'll definitely try to work on that. Thank you.
But you're really good with this.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Your response to Hannah had the reflection and emotion that I think she's talking about.
Okay.
There was much more human interaction to it. It's like, oh yeah, thank you very much. I will use that. And that was great. I mean, that's the Amar we know and appreciate, right? So I would try and implement that to be like really personable, reachable, right? For us to latch onto as an audience, because the content's great, like really good, wonderful content. The game idea was so fun. I loved that. I was excited to just watch people play it. A couple things that might speak to or help with the specifics or the logistics of how to accomplish that would be to potentially, you have a PowerPoint, you have a board to show, like in a quick sketch example of what this actually looks like. And it could take 15 seconds, right? Because you could make the perfect example really succinctly instead of having to explain to people that haven't seen it before. And it's not a familiar game that I'm aware of that anyone has played before. So that may be a way to introduce the game and the rules so that people can get into the game more quickly. Also, you want to engage the audience. You engage the team or the people. That was great. You want to engage the audience with those teams also. So the teams, the way this room is structured, you could actually say, hey, this team represents this side of the room. This team represents this side of the room. Make sure you cheer for your team or help them out, or, like just engage us as well. Like we're a part of it, right? Like we are a part of that game.
Yeah.
And we have buy-in to it. We have some stake in that game or in that team accomplishing, the drawings, which I loved. I think you handled it well. You managed the teams really well. You explained it, yes, with some error, but you recovered well, and I appreciated that. And it's very memorable and really fun. It pertained to the game theory that you were talking about in your presentation as well, really succinctly. I think it was a great way to use actionable content and say, hey, you could use this right in any consulting or work that you do, or even on a team that you're currently in right now. And you're looking to increase, some of that camaraderie you have and the ability to communicate and the importance of that, or any teachable kind of moments we have with that. So I think it's really usable, which I love, and informative, which I also love. So I think you did a really good job. Thank you, Omar.
Thank you.
Yanni's next, all right.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm going to be talking about the Team Diagnostics Survey and how I want to implement it at my current company. So I work at Greenhouse & Jinx, which is an accounting firm, and I am a resource management coordinator for the audit department, which essentially means I manage the resources, which are the team members in my firm. So anything staffing and scheduling is what I'm all about. Partners and managers come to me and they ask me to fill out a audit team, maybe in a specific industry with people with a certain skill set, and I'm supposed to utilize my staff based off of their availability to make the best team ever, the best team. And so that kind of basically relates to all of our readings, and I'm actually really excited to implement this at my firm. So what is a team diagnostic survey, or TDS for short? It's essentially an instrument that can be used for both the diagnostics of strength and weaknesses of work teams and research for behavior and performance of those teams. According to the article, there were 5 different conditions needed for ultimate team effectiveness, and that is a real team, compelling direction, enabling structure, supportive organizational context, and available expert coaching. I'm not going to go into detail about what those 5 are. I'm just going to make the assumption that you guys read as well. And what I'm going to do next is kind of talk about what I think the expected results of the survey are going to be, just based off of my own preliminary knowledge of the company from working there. And we're also using the company for our consulting project. So, we've had a few interviews and I think it's kind of worked out really well in that sense. So the potential strengths. Compelling direction, I think in auditing, it's very first step, second step, it's very clear the structure of an audit from beginning to end. So the direction of the project is very clear. So I think that's going to be a strength. Supportive organizational context. Our firm has a bunch of resources for amazing feedback, opportunities to give feedback, different types of reward processes. We also have an online resource library that has different trainings and other resources to do a great audit, and then available expert coaching. The one consistent through all teams is that they will have a partner and a manager, and that partner and manager have a plethora of knowledge, whether that's in accounting or in the specific industry that the client is in, which will help out with the team, and they're able to use them at any time. The potential weaknesses. So real team and enabling structure, I kind of think they go hand in hand in this sense. For real team, COVID, we've kind of had a struggle with turnover, and a lot of new employees have come in and they haven't really been able to assimilate into the company as much as they would have wanted. And that's caused issues with team engagement, or maybe them learning what we like to call the GHJ way on how to do things. And so that doesn't create the best team structure. And so for enabling team structure, it's kind of, my team in the scheduling has had to sometimes put a newer senior with a more experienced staff, and that experienced staff ends up teaching the new senior. And when your staff is teaching the upper management, it just creates very unclear expectations. And so when it comes to feedback, it's just not clear, and it hasn't boded well for the team. So with those results and kind of being able to do that with actual teams, I think that the benefits of doing the survey at my company will provide us with these types of results. I think it will point out strong and weak team dynamics. And what I mean by that, I'm going to use an example of Jacqueline. She is a senior and she works amazing with Andrew, and who's a manager, and she also works amazingly with Phoebe, who's a staff. Whenever the 3 of them are on teams together, for whatever reason the job is under budget, it's super efficient, really great. But oftentimes when Jacqueline works with other team members, it isn't as efficient. The job just doesn't bode as well. So if we take the survey and she's kind of able to do the survey on all the different audit teams that she's on, we would then be able to kind of see maybe is it Jacqueline? Like, is she the one that like doesn't work well with other individuals or whatever the case may be, and we'll be able to pick up on different themes in that sense for all the different teams. I also think it will highlight specific areas of growth for the whole department and as general. For example, I thought our support organizational context is like good, but you know, individuals may think that we don't have the resources available, and it'll kind of pinpoint specific areas for growth and development in the firm, and I'll be able to take that to the department heads and let them create any sort of strategies that they need. Yeah, so that's what I think the survey would be really beneficial, and I'm excited to present this to my team, and I'm grateful for you guys for letting me practice on you before I present it to them. So yeah, if you guys have any feedback, I would love it, and thanks for listening. Yes.
I always love your presentations. The way that you talk, you are like always passionate about it. It's always very real. And it's not like you're trying to like sell people on stuff. Like you're like, okay, look, these are the strengths, but also here's the weaknesses. So and I think I really appreciate that, because I feel like sometimes people expect for us as IOs to have like all the answers, right? And so here you are and you're like, okay, look, this is what I think is gonna be best and this is why. However, here's some potential drawbacks. So you're giving people as much information as possible, which I think is great. Were you nervous?
I can't breathe. I like recognized like halfway through that my mask was still on, and I was like, oh my god, I'm sweating. Should I take it off? Like, will that be so distracting if I take it off? And so my mouth was shaking. I felt myself like physically shaking because I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was like,
I do something that I do when I present, which is I go, and then I until I'm out of breath, and I'm like, but then oh my gosh, like, so I noticed that because that's something that I've noticed that I do myself, and it's so hard to kind of like just breathe.
oh no, yeah, I
And
talked too
talk
fast,
about
and
it.
so I was like, oh, I was getting excited, and I was like,
No. I didn't know if it was on purpose or not. That's why I was like, were you nervous?
No,
'Cause,
yeah,
like, if you were nervous, girl, you need to breathe. But like, honestly, that's the only feedback I have for you. Other than that, I thought it was great. I thought it was very realistic, and I love that we practice for you.
thank you. Yes.
I agree. I really like your presentation. I felt like I want to take the survey myself. You did speak very fast, so sometimes it was hard to keep up with you. And then I was like, wait, what? Like, just 1 second. Also, I noticed that you use your hands a lot to speak. That's me too. So maybe tone down the hand movements because it's distracting. And also, if you feel like your hair is ever getting in your way, maybe when you're doing a presentation, putting it back, because I noticed I would flip it a couple times.
That's embarrassing. I do touch my hair a lot. Okay, good to know.
Yeah. And then when you do those extra movements, you know, it just takes from what you were originally talking about. But overall, I could tell that you were slightly nervous, but you still seemed very confident, so that was pretty amazing. But I love your information, and I'm excited to see what your job says and if they implement it, so keep us updated.
I get really nervous when I'm presenting, so like one thing that I do is like I'll just shake my hands and kind of just get it out, because I know for me, I have the same thing where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm nervous, I'm gonna keep talking faster and faster so I can just get it over with. So that's something that I would recommend, or even just like right before presenting, instead of a quick breath, take a deep breath, like quick, and calm yourself down, because when like that, Chris was talking about it, like when your cortisol level goes up, like you're stressed and it's gonna like put you in a level of excitement. So I think it's just really like good to try to like calm your nerves. But I really enjoyed your presentation. Like every time you go up, I'm like, wow, like she has so much knowledge in what she's talking about. Thank you.
Dr. Fuller gave me the advice to just stay up there for a second and get used to being up there. Those breath like she was saying, and that's what helped me on my last presentation. The last time I did it, like I felt so much more comfortable and confident, because I was standing up there, breathing and being like, okay, this is fine. Like we're okay here. Like this will be fine. We'll be fine. And then, you know, it kind of helps. So
Yeah, definitely. I feel like when you become over aware of the things you're doing, it makes it worse. I was like, you're talking fast. Oh, now you can't breathe. Oh, here we go.
I'm saying, okay. Let yourself,
Yeah.
understand like this is fine.
Just like when you notice that you're talking fast, like one of the things that I try to implement is when I'm rehearsing at home is I purposely talk slower. So when I'm like doing my note cards or going over the presentation, I will talk really slow because that gives me a second to kind of get out what it is I'm talking about, but also to think about the words that are coming next. And then if you forget something, you're already talking kind of slow. And I mean, not like
Yeah.
slow, but and it kind of gives you a second to think about what's coming next. So just for me, that's something that's really helped to not like talk so fast. I have a tendency to do that when I get up there and I'm nervous, and I think I just talk fast anyways. So yeah, it's like slow it down. Like when you do your practice, be like,
Thank you.
yeah.
So my feedback would kind of echo what others say, but the different things that I would say to you is that you have some considerable strengths that I haven't heard mentioned yet. So I want to bring your attention to those. You're incredibly charismatic. Like you're so enthusiastic, but it's easy to like you. And you should be aware of that. You should know that. And one thing I just felt myself, like as you're giving this presentation, I cared. Like I cared about your company. And I had questions and I was even writing things down. I'm like, I'm not on our consulting project. Like, what am I doing? But you should be aware of that. Like you can make people care about something because you clearly care about it and you are excited about the possibility of having impact in a positive way, right? In a positive direction. And that's incredible. It's contagious and it's wonderful. I think that's something you could definitely utilize to your benefit to win people over, right? To buy into this, like, oh, okay, yes, we should definitely try this software, this survey, and we should implement this because Yanni wants to do it, and I like her. She's great. She has these great ideas. Okay, let's do it. So just keep that in mind. Like it's something that is it clearly comes out in your presentation. So I think that's a wonderful aspect you have. You know, the other things that people said, just logistics, small things. But otherwise, I think it was a very solid presentation, done really well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi class, my name is Lorena Villardo. Before I get into these slideshows and the topic, I'd like to discuss and ask what of these companies, what are the similarities that they all share? Anyone would like to answer? Anything they think of that these are all similar?
Clear branding.
Okay, clear branding, alrighty. Anything else? Go ahead.
There's people.
Yes.
Those logos.
Yes. So those are all great answers. One thing that really is important and key to understand is without these companies working, or without a team operating in these companies, they wouldn't be able to operate. If they were operated by one person, that'd be nearly impossible or just heavy lift work. So that's where I want to talk about teamwork, the importance of teamwork, why we need teamwork in organizations and in our lives as well. let's discuss first, what is teamwork exactly? It's to encourage, to listen to one another, to communicate, to offer constructive feedback, because we need that, right? So we can connect and understand, all right, what areas do I need to improve on? Let's also talk about what is not teamwork. Teamwork, what's not teamwork is poor quality of collaboration, poor communication, especially poor leadership. That is not good if you really are striving to reach a goal with you and your team. Now, before getting into how can teamwork, or what does teamwork really look like, I'd like to just, bring the topic of these certain fears that we may have when we are coming from a place of, well, I prefer to work by myself. We can ask, I'm not failing because of this certain person, or I can't rely on others to submit their work, especially if their assignment is incorrect. I feel like some people who just like to do their work independently do have these fears, and me myself, I am guilty. However, I do want to discuss how we can avoid having these fears and trust our teammates to do an amazing job, and ourselves as well. So I want to bring up 6 principles for a successful team. And I also like to bring in that example of the consulting projects that we do have. Let's say the objective is to improve productivity in the workplace. How do we do that as a team? So we first need specific team performance goals, correct? So each of us are required to do a specific task. And in order for us to do that successfully, or the reason why we do that, first off, is just so that everyone can play their part, but also that we have goals, specific goals met. For example, in case you're a little confused about a certain question or even about the topic and you'd like to discuss with your consultant, or you have some questions you'd like to discuss with him or her, that's a very important goal. That's an important goal to meet so that everyone in your team is very much aware of the task. Secondly, the specificity, I cannot say that new, specificity of performance objectives. Why that's important? Clear communication. Let's discuss that. Let's say in your project, you guys initially decided to do a survey, right? And then along the way, one person in your group realizes, actually, you know what? I think a video would be so much more better to get the results that we do need. In order for everyone to understand and to acknowledge your idea, you do need to communicate that. Third, the attainability of specific goals. Why this is important is it helps the team maintain their focus on getting the results. When you discuss and communicate within your team on the goals or specific ideas, we all need to keep in mind that in terms of your consulting projects, that these specific goals are going to meet the results. They're going to be able to be measurable. Fourth, identifying your teammates' strengths through challenges. Obviously, we're not done with our consulting project, but I'm sure many of us have faced a lot of challenges. This is new to most of us. And why this is important is because we have to acknowledge that although we do have weaknesses, we do have strengths, and because of those strengths, we can use that to our advantage. Let's say one person in your group has amazing leadership skills or amazing communication skills. That's going to be helpful, especially if you're going to be discussing with your consultant, discussing with him or her across whatever ideas you guys have in hand. Fifth, embrace the small wins. Yes, we are not done, and maybe you face some rocky points with the assignment, but let's say your consultant acknowledges that, wow, this team actually works together pretty well. This person's really great at communicating. This person has amazing skills in X, Y, and Z. And because of that, maybe him or her, the consultant, may consider, wow, I want that person on my team. Maybe when they leave or when they finally finish and graduate after this program, I could potentially give them a job. So we never know. I feel like the small wins are also big wins as well, because you never know what you can do or what may happen because of those accomplishments. Lastly, performance goals are compelling. Why are they compelling? Because symbols of accomplishment. that motivate, energize, and challenge teammates. Now, for example, just going back to recognizing the skills that each of you have in your group, you can also learn from those skills from other people, such as the leadership skill, for example. Maybe that's not your greatest strength. However, because you've built that closeness within your team, that person's probably most willing to be comfortable discussing with you and advising you to get to that goal and to build that skill set. That's pretty much all the ways, or few of the ways in which you can really build an effective and very skillful team. And that's pretty much my presentation. Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead.
I really like the examples. I kind of talked about that in my reflection because right now, like in my department, we're a team, but our building is more of a group. So like trying to implement more of those examples of how to like have a more like a stronger team dynamic rather than groups. I think that those examples kind of like set things in stone so I can like explain it.
Nice. Anyone else? Any feedback? Go ahead.
I love your smile. So you were smiling like the whole time, and I think that is really helpful in engaging your audience. Like it almost made me excited because you just have an amazing smile. So maybe the only constructive feedback is at the end it was a little bit abrupt. So I don't know if there was some other way you could have kind of just summarized at the end, but
The conclusion. I know. I was like, dang, I should have done that. Thank you so much. Go ahead.
So just to kind of bounce off of that, when you're up there and you're talking, it's the same tone and the same excitement as like when you and I talk, just like the two of us. So it kind of makes your presentation a little bit more intimate. And it makes it feel like instead of talking to a whole group of people, like you're talking to just a few, which is really great. You didn't seem nervous at all. No, you like totally played it off. They were like, yeah, I'm excited to be here. This is great. My only constructive feedback would be when you were talking about the 6 methods, there was a lot of text on your slides. So maybe next time just have just like an example, because I think that people might be able to remember the example easier than the actual definition.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing as her. Instead of possibly even having an example for each step, maybe a good way to conclude would have one example of a successful team instead of the individual steps. So you could see how the team is ran rather than the individual little points. And that might have been a good entry and segue into saying just thank you, right? After our presentation, instead of saying, that's all I have, thank you. You know, it's like, once you say thank you, we know that that's all you have. But you do have the confidence up there. It's exciting to hear what you have to say. You have a lot of emotion, so good job.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay.
Right. Do you still have your presentation up there or no?
Yes.
It's okay if you don't.
Actually, no, I don't.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
There was, I don't know the number slide, but it was something around slide 4. It's very early. There are a lot of like little quotes on the screen, and you talked about fear. You stumbled a bit on that slide, and this isn't a question for now. It's just for you to think about, like, why did that happen? What exactly was it about that slide or the preparation for that slide that made it difficult for you to articulate your thoughts in that moment? So just some reflection for you at a later date, right? Like, you know, sometime you could watch it back even and see like, okay, what was going on for you there? Other than that, it was quite seamless in many other aspects of the presentation. The ending was a little abrupt. You got it there.
I remember, I heard you in my voice, in my head.
Oh no.
In my head, you were like, just say thank you.
Yeah,
Like,
just say
I
thank
didn't
you.
do that.
Right. It's like pretty much that's what I got. It just was like, oh, this presentation, and it just trailed off. Like, oh no, you don't want that to happen. So just thank you. And I love the idea of a summary slide because you had such great content, just like I told you this, this, and this. Thank you. And that would be really great to summarize your presentation. It was wonderful. You have great, smile, as Brittany said. You seem like the happiest person in the room. So that's really fun and engaging. I thought it was an awesome presentation. It's really good. I love the use of a question in the beginning to engage the audience. You may consider giving them more freedom or inviting them to just blurt it out. You don't have to raise your hand. Just like say the thing, just to get more. Like you want maximum participation right off the bat. So you might say like, oh, just say it. When it comes to your mind, anything's good, just say it out loud. Because sometimes we feel like, especially as grad students, there's a right answer, and I want to get the right answer. Right? Does that resonate for a few people here? Yeah? I don't want to be wrong, right? So if everyone's speaking out loud, then nobody's right or wrong. It's just a cacophony of like just all the things that are happening, which is fine. And you can just pick out, yes, thank you, all the time. When, I don't know if it was Sarah or someone over here helped you with specificity, don't say sorry, just say thank you.
Okay. I don't know why that was hard.
No, it's
I
okay.
was just nervous.
It's okay. I'm just trying to change the perspective. You don't have to apologize for anything up there. Just if someone helps you out or participates in your game or volunteers some participation or engagement with you, thank you. That's all you got to do. Just thank you. So that would be helpful for that presentation as well. Otherwise, beautiful presentation. Really well done.
Thank you.
How's everyone doing?
Good.
Good, glad to hear it. So I'm talking about characteristics of team success today. So I'd like to start with a moment of reflection and a couple of rhetorical questions. Have you guys ever been on a great team? Yes. Have you ever been on a bad team?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you're a consulting team. Just what was the difference? Age? Okay. Communication? All right. Tasks? What else?
Accountability.
Accountability. All right, those are all great things. So characteristics relative to team effectiveness. You have job design. Are you engaged in your job? You have interdependence. Do you and your team rely on each other for tasks, goals, and feedback and rewards? The composition of your team. How big is it? Do you guys want to work as a team? Your flexibility. Can you guys adapt? Context. Do you guys have training? Do you have a good management? And your communication between groups? And then process. Do you guys have social workload sharing and communication within the group? These are all great things that really go into an effective team. But one big thing I think is missing, and that's adaptiveness. Adaptiveness is a change in performance to meet a new challenge, resulting in a functional outcome for the entire team. If you can't adapt, your team's going to fail. Even if you're really good at what you do, if you can't change it to respond to a real world situation, you're going to fail. I think I totally skipped over my picture. That was a picture of me. I was a firefighter. That picture was from the wildland fires we had in 2020. Yeah, that was a great team I was on. It was we were together for 2 weeks and we did a lot. So I wanted to put that up there. We were really adaptive. So a model for team adaptation. You have 4 phases. You have your situational assessment, your plan formulation, your plan execution, and how well you learn from that. Applying this, I'm going to apply this to a real world example, and that would be a house fire. So as a firefighter, that's something we had where the call starts off where you're dispatched. You go to the call and you start off with assessing the situation. You look, you do your 360 of the house, you check out to see how much is on fire, are people inside, how big is the structure, and then you make a plan. You go in, obviously you have to fight the fire, but then you have to ventilate the roof, you have to make sure that no one's inside, and then you execute. As you're executing, are things changing? Maybe you go in and you find 12 people inside. How does that affect your plan, and how can you circle back and adapt to it? That's what's important. And that process continues until the situation is complete and the goal is met. And then how will you learn from that? Did you guys put the fire out? Did you save people? Maybe someone died. How do you take that away? So how do you improve your adaptiveness? First, you have to prepare for the novel, not the mundane. Everyone practices what they're good at. Nobody practices those low frequency, high reward, or low frequency. I can't think of low. Nobody practices what is really difficult. Like, no one practices for multiple fatalities. Everyone practices to take blood pressures. Do you practice as a team? Success isn't formed in a vacuum. You need to perform as a team, practice as a team if you're going to perform as a team. You learn to master, not to perform. It's a classic example of learning goals versus performance goals. And then you need to train to be flexible, observant, and adaptable. Thank you.
How did you go from being a firefighter to being
So I was a firefighter in college. And I did it for 2 years, and I hurt my shoulder. And I didn't want to go through the process again. So here I am. Yeah.
Do you wish you were still a firefighter?
Because it was a really great job and I loved it. But I wasn't my calling. Like you can only do, like, I felt like I was I joke, like the 30-minute medicine man. You go in, you solve a problem, but then the next day, usually the people you help find themselves in the same situation, especially like drug addicts or anything like that. But firefighting itself is really cool. Yeah. If you guys ever like, I want a different job, be a firefighter. Yeah.
Sorry, I was asking like personal questions.
No, I like it.
I
Yeah.
just was interested because you seem so passionate about it, and then the last time you said you hated your job, so I was like, well, what happened?
Right now I work in human resources.
Right.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't hate my job. I had issues with my management. Yeah. Yeah.
Good reframe.
Thank you.
That was a really great presentation. I love that you tied something that you were passionate about into the example of the 4 steps of the team adaptiveness. I love that.
Okay.
The only suggestion that I might have is to try to cater to your audience a little bit more.
Okay.
So like, even though like they were really easy to understand examples, like that was great information about a house fire. I never thought about it in that aspect.
Yeah.
But in turn, we are all like IO students. So like at the end of your presentation, you could have been like, okay, here's some actionable steps that we can take. Or, like if this is your situation, like this is how we can apply that same thing. So like use your own example, what you're passionate about, but also tie it to your audience a little bit more. Other than that, like I loved everything. I thought it was fantastic.
Thank you.
I thought it was really interesting. I have lots of friends that are firefighters, so I was really interested in it. I would say you had one of the figures from the reading on there that was kind of like irrelevant. I mean, not irrelevant, but like you didn't really touch on it in that sense. So I feel like, or maybe you did say like one of the faces, but I feel like it was a pretty big figure. This one, yeah.
Did I skip something?
I mean, you didn't like skip it, but it was just like, it didn't like add any value because this is when you talked about like the house fire. So you could have, I don't know. It's just crazy. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Am I being picky? I'm being picky.
No, I appreciate the feedback. Yeah.
No, I mean, I agree. I have study problems, so it was a little bit for me
Yeah.
to try to take in, and I wanted to listen to you. I didn't want to try to like interpret this crazy.
Yeah, so I very intentionally just focused on the 4 phases, because if I talked about the whole thing,
Oh, I didn't even realize that you could have boxed around it. Okay, then that was on me.
that was actually, this is pulled straight from the paper that we read, so the box is already there.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I like how you listen to your past feedback about pausing in the questions.
Yeah.
So that's something that I picked up very well that you've adapted to it in this presentation. The only thing that I kind of caught was when you listen to characteristics, your volume declines and your breathing started to pick up. And then that's where I realized maybe trying to be aware of maybe because that kind of topic, you're not really confident with that. So just trying to be aware of how you pace yourself with that when you're talking about this.
Yeah, for that slide, this is definitely the part where I was like reading off of my notes the most. And I think you could tell I got nervous when I was reading. I did this last time too. So me, breathing different and talking different has definitely resulted in me being nervous because this is like the part I study the most, and I feel like I still don't know it by heart.
Can I just say you weren't as nervous as last time? Even
Oh,
though
thank you.
you might think that you were, you did a lot better. You didn't say oh that much on your dimes, so.
Are you
Yeah.
I just want to appreciate how you started. I think a lot of us go, okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and start now. But you started with like, how's everybody doing? Here's my presentation.
Oh,
I
thank
just really like that.
Thank you.
I agree with you. The beginning was really good.
Okay.
And something I wanted to mention with, I think it was Lorena's presentation as well, it was the soft start. She even said, like, before I get into the slides. So for anyone that gets really nervous or feels anxiety, as you start your presentation, give it a soft start to just kind of ease into the presentation. So it's not this like, and on your mark, it said, go. And it's like, that feels so terrifying, right? And you feel like you got to rapid fire, you got to memorize everything you say and say it this as the script dictates completely and comprehensively. It's too much, right? So if you wanted to ease into a presentation, ask a question. Or, make some, like you did, you asked a question as well. You said, I'm going to start my presentation. I have a question for you. And you asked us. The one thing I would say is use the feedback or the comments from the audience. Use those and pivot them to exactly what you're going to talk about. It felt like you got it. And you said, yeah, good, moving on.
Yeah, I was planning on those to be rhetorical questions, and then I got feedback. I was like, all right, let's roll with it. Yeah.
Oh, we're just too participatory. We're like, hey, let's get into this. Let's talk. Oh, okay. I didn't know this was rhetorical. Oh, well, that's on you. That's on all y'all. Yeah, I don't know. We just wanted to interact with you. You're just so engaging. We just want to interact in that.
I didn't notice he like kind of like really guys, like calm down. I'm so excited.
Well, in any case, if you do have an overly engaged audience, such as us, trying to pivot the audience to the talk that you're trying to give would just like bring them on board, right? It would like, okay, I hear you. I understand. Great. Thanks for your participation, your unwarranted presentation, your uninvited interjections. Thank you so much. And then moving into, what you're going to talk about. So I liked the questions. I thought that was really good. And I didn't know that they were rhetorical, even though you said that they were.
It's all right.
I just assumed as people started talking that they were supposed to. Your knowledge of the adaptive cycle, I thought was really good.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Thank you.
The adaptive cycle part was really good. The graphic was terrible.
I like decided to run with the graphic, and then when I was before class, I put it up. I was like, oh no.
It's not your fault. Like it's from the paper, right?
Yeah.
It's okay. But you knew them. You had them all memorized. You had relevant personal examples that were so potent. Like each element of that was like, okay, you assess this burning house. You develop a plan of attack for how you're going to care for this problematic thing, and then you execute your plan. But then you had a great moment in there where you're like, well, you just found more people. You got to reevaluate your plan. You got to reassess how you're gonna take care of this whole situation. This cycle then starts over, and you develop again, and you keep doing that until you finish it. I thought this is really good.
Oh, thank you.
A great example, and a real world example that I think. Yes, it's not IO specific, but it's understandable logistically. Like, yes, people do this. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. You did this, and then learn from that. Processing or debriefing, right? What went wrong or what things went well. I thought that was really well stated with great examples, and for me, it was very memorable. So I think you did a great job of that. Your graphic doesn't do you justice, right? So my eyes aren't as good as they used to be. So
Yeah,
I thought it was just sitting in the back of the room. No, it's just my eyes. Like I can barely see the board.
My plan was to read it off of that, and it came up that I was like, I can't read it.
Well, I'm glad you didn't because you knew it, and it certainly showed. So I think you did a great job. Thank you so much for a great presentation.
What didn't you like?
What didn't I like?
Yeah, maybe outside of the graphic.
Outside of the graphic?
Yeah.
As I said, it just felt ignored after you asked the question and then moved on so quickly. But I didn't. Yeah, it's hard. You got to adapt, right? You got to adapt to an audience that wants to participate. So
Sweet, thank you.
I think you did great.
I appreciate it.
Yes. I hope it was a joke. That was amazing. Your consulting teams are a little rough, huh? I hope his team is like, we're good, right?
Yeah, we're just looking at each other during the conference. Oh, wait, no. That's from
Oh, to present? Oh, okay. Oh, you're right. Michael is on here and not there. Yeah, put in the comments. I don't know who the people are.
I was looking at this, like.
Well, when they comment, so I'm just not that familiar with YouTube Live or anything. I thought I would click on it and see the people, but that's not the case.
And I think it just depends on like what they're using, like login.
Yeah, yeah.
So like if they don't have it,
Right. But yeah. I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe you'd have a better idea if it was TikTok or something. Is there a better service for you? Oh, good.
I know for the focus. Yeah, I mean, there was one night I did it because I was just watching them, and then I was like 7 a.m.
But I understand. Like if you're so into it or just like you have a lot of anxiety, you're trying to get out some way. I can understand that.
Yeah, there was a story time that is eating more. That algorithm, if I could run that, I should figure out how to figure out this algorithm. I'd be like,
I've done that. Not for TikTok, but I know the read. I'm like, you're doing something, you're reading a book or
Yeah.
something, and then like, I see birds.
The sun's coming out.
I
Yeah, we've all been there.
when I was like, wow, this is social media.
Well, healthy choice. Well
I'm like, okay. Shades are cheating.
Withdraw.
You guys want a break?
done. You're it. You are our entire focus.
You guys wanna go home, huh?
I'm sure some do.
Well, unfortunately, I have 2 presentations tonight, so I'm a little bit nervous because I have to talk about, I don't have to, I chose to talk about my dissertation tonight. Last week, the theme was leadership, and I know Dr. Fuller was asking me about it, so I'll start with that one. So my name is Brittany Quintanar. I'm a student here with you guys. I'm so used to saying when I go on Zoom with my students, I'm the STEM counselor, but you guys don't need to know that. So I want to talk to you about higher education in California, and specifically in public institutions, and what that looks like and what I've been researching. So just to give you an overview, I'm going to talk about California specifically, some of the complexities in California in higher education, a little bit of preview of my dissertation work, and then any questions that I can answer for you. So I timed myself like 5 times, and it's not good. It's not 5 minutes. So I really prefer engaging, going back and forth, but we don't have time. So I can't ask you this question, but I'll just throw out, if anyone knows what university this is, just shout out the name.
Oh, is it the University of Redlands?
No,
It looks cool.
Anyone else? What university is that? I'll give you clues in California.
Berkeley?
Yes, it's UC Berkeley. And the year is at the bottom. It was founded in 1868. So a little bit about public education or higher education in California. It's a 3-tiered system. So we have the University of California system. The first one was Berkeley. Currently, there are 10 UC campuses. Only 9 of them offer undergraduate programs. San Francisco is only for graduate school. We have the California State University system, and currently there are 23 campuses in the Cal State system. And then we have the California Community Colleges where I work, and we currently have 116. And that number keeps going up every year. We're constantly adding more. So our 3-tiered system in California was really designed to have 3 different purposes and serve different missions in the 3 different systems. So the UC system currently serves about 250,000 undergraduate students. And their main focus is research and preparing students for professional and graduate school. And when the California Master Plan was first written, well, it hasn't been updated, but it was written in 1960, they were the only institution that was allowed to offer doctoral degrees. Now that has changed since then. The Cal State system currently has about 500,000 undergraduate students, and they're more focused on getting students ready for the workforce, so more applied degrees. That's why when you look at Cal State's, you're going to find the teaching programs and the nursing programs where you don't usually see that at the UC schools. And the California Community Colleges, they take 100% of the students. So they're an open access institution, and they really serve 3 overarching missions. One is to prepare students for transfer who do want to go on to the 4-year school. One is to serve the vocational and technical areas for students who are going to get a certificate, go into the workforce. And then the other is, increasing their skills if they need remedial education, if they're not quite at the college level area. So an interesting, and there's over 2 million students right now in the California community colleges. The interesting thing about our system is we're actually dependent on each other, but we're not accountable to each other. And we have very different governance and operating structures. So our higher education system in California is extremely complex. So if you're thinking about if you want to be a president of one of these colleges, one of these campuses that I mentioned, there are so many macro external forces kind of coming onto you at your site level as president of the college. You have in each system, you have a system office and mandates and rules. You have a system-wide board of trustees or a board of regents. Then, especially in the community college system, they have local control and they have board of trustees in their region. You've got labor unions you have to deal with in community colleges. There's usually only 2, one for faculty, one for staff. But at the 4-year institutions, they have up to 30 different labor unions represented on a single campus. So imagine the negotiations that you'd have to go through on one single campus. You've got the impact of the California legislature and that controls EdCode, policy, and the big thing, your funding. And also the governor takes part in educating the lobby for things in terms of what's going to be helpful for students. You also have city local control board that can have control over your enrollment growth because you're going to impact the local community with housing and resources. So there's just a lot of different things that interplay in California public higher education. So this is an image here of the first Cal State, which was founded in 1857. Does anyone recognize that one? Chico? No. Any other guesses for Cal State?
Fullerton?
Fullerton? No. One more guess.
LA.
Cal State LA? No. It's actually San Jose. So San Jose was the first Cal State campus. So the way I view the president role in one of these systems is I feel like the president is acting as a filter. So they have all these external things coming from above down to the site level. And as the leader of the college or university, they kind of have to go through that, sort through it, decide what gets through and goes down to their individual constituents, so their faculty and staff. which then has a trickle-down effect to the students and an impact on the students. So this was kind of my interest of where my dissertation came from. So I'm sorry I had to give you like that background, but just so you kind of understand. I was wondering, like, how do these college and university presidents manage all these external macro complexities? And how does that eventually trickle down to the success of students? So I decided to do a qualitative grounded theory study, and I started this summer. The difference between an experimental study and grounded theory would be you're not starting off with a hypothesis. You're basically starting with whatever your topic is. You're collecting your data and observations, and then you're developing a theory from that after you analyze your data. So there are different ways to do a grounded theory study. Most of them involve 3 types of coding. So you have open coding, axial coding, and selective. I just am now finishing up my open coding. So I'll probably start moving into axial, where I take all the hundreds of codes and kind of put it more into themes, and also start to look for relationships between the codes before I can continue to go forward. And so what happened was this summer, I solicited participation to all 11 UC chancellors and 2 vice chancellors from each campus, because I was nervous that they were going to be a little snobbish and not want to participate. I also solicited all 23 Kelsey presidents and about 90 or 95 community college presidents. And I was surprised by my response rate. I guess I should have realized that educators have big egos and they love to talk. So I did end up interviewing 47 different presidents this summer. The interviews lasted anywhere between 25 minutes to an hour, but the average was about 35 minutes. The worst part of that, because it's not all fun, was the transcription. So I did not anticipate how long that was going to take. It took way longer. Basically, a 30-minute interview took me 3 hours to transcribe and to like start open coding. But anyways, what I found so far, well, actually, I'm going to give you the research questions. So I actually had 4 research questions in my dissertation, but for time, I'm only going to talk about one of the questions, and that is the one on the board. So one of my research questions is, how do these California higher education leaders navigate the multiple and competing complexities? Okay, and so what I found so far in my open coding process is 2 main things. One, they really have to facilitate alignment. That's one of my favorite quotes from one of the participants is, I only have 40% control, but I have 100% of responsibility to get things done. And that relates back to, they're almost like at-will employees that can be fired at any time, either from the board of trustees or the faculty have so much control on campuses, they can do a vote of no confidence and kick them out if they don't like them. So you cannot go into higher education with a dictator or top-down model. It's not going to work. You're not going to last very long. And so they really need to facilitate alignment between what the college is already doing, the goals and strategic plans they've already put in place as a college, and find alignment with all these other new mandates that are coming down from the state at different levels, and try to find some type of cohesion, alignment between the two. And then they need to shift that model or plan by modeling the way to their campus constituents. That's the only way it's going to work. So setting the tone and the vision, by making that very clear. They have different ways of doing that. Another quote was, the president must model the way, otherwise no one else is going to care. And that's true. And so another example that someone gave was, I will start the work of a new initiative by starting a new committee or new chair to get the work going, kind of model what I expect, but I'm going to step back and let the rest of the people take over once I can get that work or new program started. I found there's probably over 30 different challenges that were mentioned. Aside from COVID, these are the top 3 on the screen. So one of the big things is top-down approaches are not going to work because of shared governance, because of labor unions. And so a solution to that would be to, instead of trying to be a dictator, to empower your employees and constituents by setting clear and accountable goals and making them more accountable and responsible for the work. Another huge thing that they complained about was faculty. So faculty buy-in is an issue, and faculty tend to be very resistant to change. And that's huge. I see that all the time. So shared governance can be like a slog in slowing things down, but it can also be a mechanism for gaining their buy-in, and you really have to go about it the right way. Some presidents, it was actually more the UC presidents, mentioned their use of financial levers to get faculty to do what they wanted or do buy-in, or to gain buy-in. So some were positive levers and some were negative. So, offering reduced course load if the faculty will engage in this new project. Giving them maybe an extra TA or research assistant, giving them extra lab space if they'll work on this new project, or the foot where they will take away resources to certain faculty if they don't engage in these new products or programs that they're trying to roll out. And the third big challenge that was mentioned was, and probably the number one, was actually unpredictable and unstable funding because it is state funded. So that's the difference between Baptist and any of the schools I just mentioned is we're partially state funded. So all of you guys as taxpayers are paying into those systems. And so we need to be responsible in how we're using the resources. But every single president complained about funding, that they just feel like there's not enough. There was only one, maybe 2 out of 47 that took a different mindset. So what I started to realize is they're all kind of taking on the victim mindset. We don't have enough. If only we had more money, we could do our jobs. If only we had more, we could do what we're supposed to do. I really see that as a victim mindset, and one president pointed that out. So maybe if they just switch that mindset, because there's never going to be enough money. If you look at the history of higher education, the first college that we ever had was Harvard. From day one, higher education institutions have always been underfunded. It's in our history. So I don't see that changing. So it's more about maybe how do we change that mindset and do more with the staff and resources that you have to be more efficient. So this will be to be continued. I still have to do a lot more coding, and then I get to do the fun part, which is all the writing. And then hopefully in the spring or the summer, you'll get an invitation to come and see me defend my dissertation. Hopefully, I don't know. We'll see. But thank you for listening. Do you guys have any questions? Anna.
Did you get inspired from the drama with Dr. Reese, or how did you get inspired on this topic initially?
Well, I worked in a community college, plus I'm a product. I've also gone to Cal State. I've been to private schools, so on a daily basis, I see how our system has set up all these barriers and roadblocks for students, and it frustrates me as a counselor because I see it every day. And so I just want to have a better understanding of, it really starts at the top. The leader of the college totally will affect what gets done in that college and programs and initiatives that are put out for students, because they control the culture, they control the budget. And so it really boils down to the president of the college. They have the control, even though, there's still things above them, but they have quite a bit of control.
Yeah, and both of us as Dayton Norco College employees, as a student, I remember Dr. Reese. He was amazing, love him, will fight for him forever, but that's because I feel like maybe he was too honest about what was going on, which obviously translates to his life, and it overthrew him at that point. But you can definitely see a difference between his leadership versus Dr. Monica Green and how she runs her school. So it is pretty interesting. That's where I thought
can be more of a puppet than Dr. Reese.
Mm-hmm.
A board of trustees,
he was more of a rebel.
A board of trustees will hire presidents that they can control, even though they may not be the best fit or have the best knowledge, because they're easier to work with.
Yeah, that's why I kind of was like, oh, okay, this is interesting that you decided to talk about that. But just to comment on your presentation, I'm always so fascinated to hear what you have to say. When you're up there, it's like you're having a conversation, but I love to hear what you have to talk about because I'm also interested in what you talk about. But this is really long.
I know.
So obviously we have the time today, but I would just take that into account.
and you try to.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's my only one research question, and I tried myself 5 times, and I like felt like I had to give you the back history before I could explain that, but I guess I could cut that out. Mark.
So I always enjoy your presentations, just like Hannah was saying. I feel like your presentation on the psychology stuff was better than the psychology lectures I've had. You're a really great presenter. So I don't really have any negative feedback. I just wanted to say, if you have to do any type of transcription again for your research, my mentor told me about this app called Otter AI. It's like a real-time transcription service, so you can just have that. You don't have to like waste time doing it if you need that.
I appreciate that. I actually use Zoom transcription, which to transcribe it for me. The problem is it's only like 85% accurate.
Okay.
And what actually took longer is the way Zoom prints it out. Is if the participant's talking for 5 minutes straight, it'll work for that. But when it goes on the file Word document, it breaks it up like every 5 seconds. So it's really hard to analyze the data when a sentence and paragraph is like broken up with all these timestamps.
Oh.
So it's almost like correcting that.
Yeah.
Is what took longer. But Otter.
Yeah, Otter AI. I don't know if
Otter
it
AI.
does that, but yeah, that's crazy that they do that.
Yeah. Thank you.
I just want to say, I really like how you present, like, you're clearly knowledgeable, you clearly did the research, and you clearly know what you're talking about. So I think that's always like really interesting. I find you're very articulate because this is a very complicated topic. And I like that you went, well, I like that you went over the background because I thought that was interesting. This is something just as feedback, just to draw attention to it. I don't think it's, again, I think this is a preference thing. I really do. Because you have a very confident way of speaking. You stop a little bit and you kind of emphasize your words. So because I know you and I think you're really cool, I think that works for you. I think that has a little bit of confident level there. At the same time, if you're only presenting, that could translate as a little bit more aggressiveness.
Yeah.
So I think it's just more like a draw attention to it, to see how you want to present yourself during which audience you're in.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
I want to say, you brought that filter image on the screen. I was just listening. I was like, what is this? Tell me. And then you got to it. You're like, oh, the presidents are like filters. I was like, oh. And so I felt like that was a really good use of analogy and an image. The thing I did notice, and it's just my personal values here, but you use, I think, victim mentality, and to me, it strikes as a very negative connotation. And so when you said that, I was actually pulled out of your presentation to, does she have a beef with these people? And like in my mind, I'm a little distracted by that. I don't honestly believe you have a beef with them, but just thinking about language and how it might be perceived for certain audiences may be helpful.
Okay. Thank you.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought I was like on the edge of my seat, like, okay, I want all the information that you have. It was really great because there's such a depth of investment of yourself in it, right? Like you are so deeply invested in this topic, both in time and in money and in like attention. It's just like everything, right? Just personally, you're really invested. And that comes through in your presentation and in the, I know it's probably very difficult to like pare that down to like a shorter presentation. It's probably painful because you got to cut out good stuff. But that's just part of presentations, right? They can't always be all encompassing. I thought it was great. You had really good visuals, beautiful slides, great questions, and supported with I think very astute observations from the. I don't know if you'd call it at this stage like the preliminary analysis, you know, that you've looked into. I think you already have some really great, strong key insights into further things to explore, right, in your future analyses that you'll do. So I'm excited for your work. I think it'll be really contributory to the field of investigating kind of higher ed and how it works. So I'll be interested to see where it goes and where it takes you. I think you did a great job.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I forgot to ask you guys.
Yeah, we got this one. Cal,
No, there was one more.
San Marcos?
I think they had brain farted.
San
The
Jose?
first community college. Does anyone know the first California community college?
Was it, did you say San Jose or? Was it?
No, community college.
Oh, community college. Oh, no, I don't think we got that one.
Does anyone know without Googling it?
What was
What was it, Cal State? The first Cal State was San Jose, Berkeley was the first UC, and the first community college was Fresno.
Cool. It's fun trivia.
I loved all your guys' presentations on teams today. So I'm gonna talk about kind of like a different side of it, different side of the coin. Has anyone read this book before? What is it? Groupthink? Nobody?
The term. I think someone does it. Well, I'm so excited that you're doing groupthink because I almost did groupthink for my presentation. So I'm super excited.
This was the year Dr. Flora was born.
Yay, all right.
1918?
Did they fail?
Sorry.
That was a good one, Tiana.
I like it. I like it. That was good.
Okay, so groupthink. So I'm gonna go over defining what groupthink is, antecedents, negative errors basically from the result of groupthink, and then end by how can you try to prevent groupthink from happening. Tiana, since we haven't read the book, but you know what it is, what's your definition of groupthink?
Groupthink is kind of when you have a bunch of people that get together and start talking about things. There's typically like one person who has a general idea of what they want to talk about, and everybody else kind of goes along with that. Whether it's a good thing for the group or a bad thing for the group, it's basically the idea that a few people are making the decisions and creating the thinking processes for an entire group of people.
That's pretty good. That's great. So if any of you are familiar with the term social capital, there's a lot of positive things regarding having social capital in your life, right? But there's also what we call the dark side of social capital. And so one of those dark sides is groupthink. Palau, I don't know how to say his name, and colleagues identified 6 negative possible consequences from having high levels of social capital, and one of those negative consequences can be groupthink. So groupthink are dynamic influences that can surface when you're making a group decision. And it's usually the result of prioritizing harmony and conformity of the group. So you don't want to like upset that vibe you have in your group or upset anyone in the group. It's usually the leader of the group. And so you'll just kind of go along, like Tiana said, with whatever that decision making process looks like. So this book is pretty cool. I have never been a history buff, but I'm learning to like history more and more, thanks to Dr. Shu. So if you like history, number 1, read this book. Or if you want to learn more about groupthink, read this book. And the reason I say history is because what Irving Janis did in this book is he took 5 very high level historical events that happened in America, and they're on the screen. And he analyzed actual transcripts of the meetings that occurred between like the president and the presidential staff that were involved in the decisions regarding these events. So the Pig, North Korea War, Pearl Harbor, Watergate cover-up, and then the escalation of the Vietnam War. And so what he does is he kind of breaks down each of those events and shows you where the occurrence of groupthink happened. So it's really intriguing. He also takes 2 events to give examples of the flip side of events that did not suffer or succumb to the groupthink errors. And those 2 events were the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Marshall Plan. So some antecedents that Janis came up with from all of his research on these events. First of all, you can't have groupthink if you don't have a group. So it's not gonna occur if you have one person. It's probably not gonna occur even if you have 2 people. It does really need to be a group. Also, it's gonna be a certain type of group. So first of all, not every group is gonna succumb to groupthink. Just like there are groups that can make decisions, that will be fine, but the reverse can also happen. So when we think about the kind of group that's more susceptible to groupthink, it's going to be a very cohesive group. So often they work together a while, they have shared values and beliefs, and they're just very cohesive. So there can also be structural elements. Insulation from outsiders, so they don't really allow outsiders to come into their group or their decision-making process. And that's usually the result of the leader not allowing that to happen. Also, the lack of deliberation and dissent is not allowed. So people are not maybe encouraged to share their opinions or opposing opinions oftentimes. And so there's a lot of lack of information that's even coming into the conversations for the decision. And a lot of times the group is homogeneous in terms of like their SES background, religion background. They're just a very close-knit, cohesive-looking group. The other thing is there can be contextual factors. Like in all the examples that he had in here, those are very crisis situations, high-level stress. And that can also increase the chance of groupthink when you're in more like a crisis mode. So some symptoms that he identified, he actually identified 3 different symptoms. Overestimation of the group. So you actually think that your group is invulnerable to making mistakes. Or you justify your decision because you say you're acting morally. The second symptom is you're closed-minded. Again, not letting other ideas to come into the group and kind of insulating and protecting yourself. And the third symptom he outlined was pressures towards uniformity, like Tiana mentioned. So trying to have an illusion that you're all on the same page and self-censoring and maybe not vocalizing concerns you have because you want to be on page with your peers in that group. And then he identified 7 errors that can result from groupthink. And I kind of categorize them into 3 different broad areas. So not doing detailed research, because again, you're not really trying. So incomplete assessment of alternative options, poor information searches, failure to examine risks, and failure to reappraise initially rejected alternatives. So sometimes some maybe did try to dissent or be like, well, I don't know about plan A because that was tried before. And maybe not going back and revisiting some old plans that you want to revisit deeper. Failure to identify contingency plans. So maybe you have a plan A, B, C, and D, and not just a plan A, because you never know how it's going to go after that. And most of these groupthink errors, if not all of them, they're really the result of heuristics, which I talked about before. And then he ends the book by outlining, I think it ended up being 8 different suggestions for reducing groupthink errors. I try to kind of combine ones together that seem similar. So reducing leader preferences, soliciting feedback, and that's going to be both internally in your organization, but it could be externally as well. Having multiple planning and deliberation groups, not just like one group making a decision, especially if it's a big decision. And then they talk about subdividing groups into smaller groups because when they get too big, it can get even worse. And making sure that it's not the same leader like in charge of every group, because you're probably more susceptible to groupthink if it's the same leader running every single group. Developing alternative scenarios, like I kind of mentioned earlier. And the big thing is allowing dissent and collaboration. So normalizing and making it okay for people in the group to speak up and give alternative viewpoints. So they have it. Obviously, that's going to be the result of trust and other things like that that were already mentioned earlier today. So that is it for my presentation on groupthink. Do you guys have any questions?
Oh,
So you mentioned social capital and how it relates to groupthink. Could you give a definition of social capital? Because I have the definition in my head, but I'm not really linking it to that. Could you give a definition of that?
Social capital usually has to do with the networks that you have and the access to information they have. So the larger your network, the more social capital you have of information and resources.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
You know, if there was groupthink during better, because my understanding, I think everyone was being like very patriotic